What if I told you that most of your suffering is not caused by what happens to you, but by how your senses touch the world? Every day, without realizing it, you are pulled, pushed, tempted, irritated, and exhausted by 6 invisible doors. Through these doors, the world enters your mind. And through these doors, suffering quietly begins. You wake up and immediately look at your phone. You hear something you don't like. You smell, taste, touch, think. And before you know it, your mood has shifted, your peace has disappeared, and your mind is no longer your own. In Buddhism, these 6 doors are called the 6 senses: eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. When they are untrained, they become the chains that bind us to dissatisfaction, anxiety, craving, and conflict. When these senses come into contact with objects, sights, sounds, smells, tastes, feelings, and thoughts, they can awaken what Buddhism calls the 3 poisons: greed, hatred, and delusion. Greed makes us cling. Hatred makes us resist. Delusion makes us misunderstand reality. And so, again and again, we fall into the same cycle of suffering, chasing what feels good, avoiding what feels bad, and never truly resting. But here is the quiet, hopeful truth. You do not need to escape the world to find peace. You only need to understand how you experience it. In this video, we will gently explore how each of the 6 senses can trap you in suffering. And more importantly, how Buddhism teaches us to live with them wisely, peacefully, and with freedom in daily life, right where you are. Let us begin with the sense that dominates our modern world more than any other: the sight. Part 1. The eyes and sight. How seeing becomes suffering. The eyes are powerful. Before a single word is spoken, before a thought even forms clearly, the eyes are already working, scanning, judging, comparing, wanting, rejecting. You open your eyes in the morning and immediately the world rushes in. Light, color, shapes, movement. Beautiful things attract you, unpleasant things disturb you, and neutral things quietly pass without notice. In Buddhism, the problem is not seeing itself. Seeing is natural. The suffering begins when seeing turns into grasping, resisting, or confusing, when the 3 poisons enter through the eyes. Let's look at how this happens in daily life. You see something beautiful, a person, a place, a luxury item, a perfect body on social media. A subtle tension arises. I want that. I wish I had that. Why is my life not like that? This is greed through the eyes. It doesn't always shout. Often it whispers quietly, creating dissatisfaction with what you already have. Suddenly, your simple home feels too small. Your ordinary life feels not enough. Your own body feels inadequate. And so the eyes, instead of being windows to reality, become mirrors of craving. Now think of the opposite. You see something you don't like, a mess, a face that annoys you, a post that triggers anger, news that scares you. Immediately your body tightens, your breath changes, your mind contracts. This is hatred through the eyes, not dramatic hatred, but small daily irritation, disgust, judgment, rejection. And then there is delusion through the eyes, when we believe that what we see is the full truth. We see a smiling face and assume happiness. We see a luxury car and assume success. We see a quiet person and assume weakness. We see only surfaces, yet we build entire stories on them. In Buddhism, this is one of the deepest roots of suffering, mistaking appearances for reality. So how do we work with the eyes, not by closing them, but by seeing wisely? The Buddha taught something very simple, yet very powerful: mindful seeing. This means learning to notice not only what you see, but how you react to what you see. For example, when you see something attractive, pause and gently notice. A pleasant sight has arisen. Not, I must have it, just pleasant sight. This small shift breaks the chain between seeing and craving. When you see something unpleasant, instead of pushing it away mentally, try noticing. An unpleasant sight has arisen. Not, this shouldn't be here. Just, this is unpleasant. You are no longer fighting reality. You are allowing it. This practice doesn't make life dull. It makes life honest. Another powerful antidote Buddhism offers is reflection on impermanence. Everything you see is changing. The beautiful fades, the ugly passes, the exciting becomes ordinary, the boring becomes interesting again. When you truly feel this, your eyes become softer. You stop demanding that the world freeze in the shape you prefer. And there is also the practice of contentment. Instead of training your eyes to look for what is missing, train them to notice what is already here: the warmth of sunlight through a window, the quiet order of a simple room, the face of someone who cares about you, the miracle of being able to see at all. Contentment is not blindness. It is clear vision without endless wanting. In daily life, this might look like scrolling less and observing more. Walking without headphones sometimes, just seeing trees, buildings, people, without labeling everything as good or bad. Noticing when your eyes rush ahead of your heart. The eyes will always see. That is their nature. But suffering is optional. It arises only when we allow what we see to control how we feel and who we become. When the eyes are guided by awareness instead of desire, by kindness instead of judgment, they no longer trap you in suffering. They become quiet teachers, reminding you again and again that peace does not come from having better things to look at, but from learning how to truly see. Part 2. The ears and hearing. How sound becomes suffering. The ears are always open. Even when you close your eyes, even when you sleep lightly, sound keeps entering your world. A voice, a noise, a melody, a silence. And just like the eyes, the ears do not merely receive sound, they shape your emotional world more than you may realize. Think about how a single sentence can change your entire day. A kind word lifts you. A harsh word wounds you. A rumor disturbs you. A compliment stays in your mind for hours. A criticism echoes for years. In Buddhism, sound itself is not the problem. The suffering begins when sound meets the three poisons: greed, hatred, and delusion. Let's look at greed first. You hear praise and you want more. You crave recognition, validation, admiration. Soon, your peace depends on how others speak to you. When the praise stops, something inside feels empty. You may find yourself seeking louder applause, stronger approval, more attention. This is greed through the ears, not for material things, but for emotional confirmation. Then comes hatred. You hear something you don't like, criticism, sarcasm, rejection, or simply a tone that feels cold. Instantly, tension arises. You replay the words in your mind. You argue with them internally. You imagine defending yourself or attacking back. The sound itself has already passed. But the suffering continues because the mind refuses to let go. This is one of the most painful traps. Not what was said, but what we keep hearing again and again inside. And then there is delusion. We often believe that what we hear is the full truth. We mistake opinions for facts. We confuse noise for meaning. We allow random voices from news, social media, strangers to shape our identity and view of reality. Buddhism gently reminds us, not every sound deserves your belief. Not every voice deserves your obedience. So how do we work with the ears in daily life? The Buddha taught something beautifully simple. Listen with awareness, not reaction. This means noticing the sound before judging it. When a sound arises, instead of immediately labeling it as good or bad, pleasant or unpleasant, try pausing and feeling it as just sound, a vibration, a wave, a passing experience. For example, when someone criticizes you, instead of immediately defending yourself mentally, try noticing first. A harsh sound has arisen. Just that. This small space between hearing and reacting gives you freedom. It allows wisdom to enter before emotion takes over. Another powerful practice is deep listening. Most of the time, we don't truly listen. We wait to reply. We listen to confirm our beliefs. We listen to win. But Buddhist listening is different. It is listening without needing to agree or disagree immediately. Listening without preparing your next sentence. Listening simply to understand. This kind of listening dissolves conflict before it grows. And then there is selective silence. You do not need to expose your ears to every noise, not every argument, not every outrage, not every piece of gossip. Sometimes peace is protected not by reacting wisely, but by choosing not to listen at all. Turn off what disturbs your heart unnecessarily. Choose sounds that calm, not inflame. Soft music, nature, silence. In Buddhism, silence is not emptiness, it is clarity. And finally, there is right speech, which also relates to the ears. Because every sound you receive, you also send out. Harsh speech poisons not only others, but your own mind. Kind speech purifies both the speaker and the listener. When your own words become gentle, your ears slowly become gentle too. You stop expecting the world to shout at you and start hearing life as it truly is, imperfect, changing, but deeply human. The ears will always hear, but suffering arises only when sound becomes identity, attack, or desire. When the ears are guided by mindfulness, patience, and compassion, they no longer trap you in suffering. They become doors not to conflict, but to understanding. Part 3. The nose and smelling. How smelling becomes suffering. Smelling may seem like the most innocent of the senses. After all, smell feels subtle, fleeting, almost unimportant compared to what we see or hear. But in Buddhism, even this quiet sense has the power to shape desire, memory, aversion, and attachment. A single scent can bring back an entire past. A single smell can attract or repel you instantly. And without noticing, the mind follows. Smell works silently, but deeply. Think about how certain fragrances make you feel safe, nostalgic, comforted. The smell of food from childhood, the scent of a loved one, the freshness after rain. And then there are smells that disturb you: pollution, decay, sweat, chemicals. Your face tightens, your body recoils, your mood shifts. In Buddhism, smell itself is neutral. The suffering begins when smell triggers the 3 poisons. Let's begin with greed. You encounter a pleasant smell: food, perfume, incense. Immediately, desire arises. I want more. I want to own this. I want to taste this. Soon, the mind is no longer resting in the present moment. It is chasing the continuation of pleasure. This is how craving quietly enters through the nose. You may notice this when walking past a bakery or a restaurant. The smell itself is just a sensation, but suddenly you feel hungry. Not in the body, but in the mind. You weren't hungry before. The smell created a story. Then comes hatred. An unpleasant smell appears. Garbage, smoke, decay. Instantly, resistance arises. You wrinkle your face. You feel irritation. You want it gone now. This is natural. But when the reaction becomes mental agitation, the suffering begins, not because the smell exists, but because the mind refuses to allow it. And then there is delusion. We often associate smells with fixed meanings. This smell is good. That smell is bad. This means comfort. That means danger. Sometimes this is helpful. But often we cling to these labels without realizing that smell is simply a passing experience, not a permanent reality. So how does Buddhism suggest we work with the nose? Through mindful breathing and mindful smelling. The breath and the nose are deeply connected. When you breathe consciously, you begin to notice smells without becoming lost in them. For example, when you smell something pleasant, instead of immediately craving it, try noticing. A pleasant smell has arisen. Feel it. Let it be. Let it pass. When you smell something unpleasant, instead of tightening, try. An unpleasant smell has arisen. No story. No resistance, just recognition. This transforms smell from a source of reaction into a source of awareness. Another powerful antidote is reflection on impermanence. Smells do not last. Even the most beautiful fragrance fades quickly. Even the worst stench disappears sooner or later. When you truly feel this, your attachment to pleasant smells and aversion to unpleasant ones becomes softer. You stop demanding that life smell only the way you like. There is also the practice of gratitude through the senses. Many people cannot smell at all. When you remember this, every scent becomes a quiet gift, not something to fight or chase, but something to appreciate briefly and let go of. And then there is the deeper level Buddhism points to. Smell, like all senses, is not happening to a permanent self. It is just conditions meeting: nose, air, particles, consciousness. When you see this, you stop saying, "I am disturbed by this smell," and begin to see. There is disturbance arising due to conditions. This small shift removes the heaviness of ego from experience. In daily life, this might look like pausing when a smell triggers you, breathing calmly instead of reacting, letting smells come and go like passing clouds. It may sound simple, but simplicity is where freedom begins. The nose will always smell, but suffering is not in the smell itself. It is in the clinging, rejecting, and misunderstanding that follow. When the nose is guided by awareness instead of craving, by acceptance instead of resistance, it no longer traps you in suffering. It becomes another doorway into presence, a gentle reminder that life is happening now, not in your reactions to it. Part 4. The tongue and tasting. How taste becomes suffering. The tongue is small, yet incredibly powerful. Through it, we experience sweetness and bitterness, pleasure and disappointment, comfort and craving. And more than we realize, the tongue shapes not only what we eat, but how we live. Taste is one of the most immediate pleasures in life. A favorite meal, warm tea, chocolate, fruit, spices, these moments feel harmless. And yet, Buddhism reminds us, when taste meets the untrained mind, it can quietly lead to suffering. This is how the three poisons enter through the tongue. First, greed. You taste something delicious, and immediately the mind says, "More, another bite, another plate, another indulgence." There is nothing wrong with enjoying food. The problem begins when enjoyment becomes attachment. You may notice how quickly satisfaction fades. The first bite is wonderful. By the last bite you are already full, yet still reaching. The pleasure is no longer in the body, it is in the craving mind. Then comes hatred. You taste something unpleasant, too bitter, too salty, too bland. Instant resistance arises. You may feel irritated, disappointed, even angry over something as small as flavor. This may seem trivial, but notice how quickly the mind tightens over something so temporary. And then there is delusion. We often believe that happiness can be found through taste alone, that if we eat better, richer, more exotic food, life will feel complete. But taste disappears in seconds, and the mind, still hungry, looks for the next pleasure. So how does Buddhism suggest we work with the tongue? Through mindful eating. This means eating not only to fill the body, but to understand the mind. When you eat, slow down. Notice the texture, notice the flavor, notice when pleasure arises, notice when it fades. Instead of chasing taste, observe it. A powerful practice is simply asking, is my body hungry? Or is my mind bored, restless, or emotional? Often we eat not because we need nourishment, but because we need comfort. Another antidote is gratitude. Before eating, pause and reflect. This food came from many conditions: soil, rain, farmers, transport, time. When gratitude is present, greed becomes softer. You eat with respect, not demand. And there is also moderation, which Buddhism teaches not as restriction, but as wisdom. Eating enough, not too much. Enjoying taste without letting it rule you. When the tongue is guided by mindfulness, taste becomes a teacher, showing you how desire arises and how peace returns when you don't follow it blindly. The tongue will always taste, but suffering is not in taste. It is in forgetting that taste is temporary. When you remember this, every meal becomes a quiet meditation, and even the simplest food becomes enough. Part 5. The body and sensing. How touch becomes suffering. The body is where life feels most real. Pain, pleasure, warmth, cold, tension, relaxation. All of these are experienced through the body. And because these sensations feel so personal, the body becomes one of the strongest doors through which suffering enters. In Buddhism, the body is not rejected. It is respected, observed, and understood. But when bodily sensations meet the three poisons, suffering arises. First, greed. A pleasant sensation appears: comfort, softness, warmth, physical pleasure. And immediately the mind says, "I want this to continue. I want more." You may notice this when lying in bed, in a hot shower, during a massage, or in intimacy. The body feels good, but the mind begins to cling, and when the sensation fades, dissatisfaction appears. Then comes hatred. Pain arises, a headache, back pain, fatigue, illness, discomfort, and instantly the mind resists. "I don't want this. This shouldn't be happening. Why me?" But in Buddhism, pain is natural. Suffering begins when the mind fights what the body is already experiencing. And then there is delusion. We often believe, "This body is me," but the body is constantly changing. It was once a child's body. It will one day be an old body. It is not stable enough to be a permanent self. So how does Buddhism suggest we work with the body? Through mindful awareness of sensations. Instead of labeling sensations as good or bad, simply notice. There is warmth, there is tension, there is pressure, there is ease. This simple naming removes the emotional weight from sensation. Another powerful practice is breathing with the body. When discomfort arises, instead of tightening, breathe gently into that area, not to force it away, but to meet it with kindness. This teaches the mind that pain does not require panic. And then there is acceptance. Not passive resignation, but understanding. Understanding that the body by nature will age, get sick, and eventually die. This is not a failure. It is life. When you stop demanding that the body be perfect, it becomes easier to care for it without being enslaved by it. In daily life, this may look like listening to your body's limits, resting when tired, moving gently instead of harshly, not using the body only as a tool for pleasure or productivity, but as a living companion. The body will always feel, but suffering is not in feeling, it is in clinging to pleasure and resisting pain. When the body is met with awareness and compassion, it becomes not a prison but a path, a quiet guide reminding you how to stay present, grounded and free. Part 6. The mind and cognizing how thoughts become suffering. The mind is the most subtle sense and the most powerful. While the eyes see, ears hear, nose smells, tongue tastes and body feels, the mind interprets everything. It is the place where meaning is created, and it is also where suffering is born, repeated and prolonged. In Buddhism, the mind is considered a sense just like the others because it touches thoughts, memories, emotions and ideas the same way the eyes touch form or the ears touch sound. But unlike the other senses, the mind never stops talking. Even in silence, it speaks. Even in stillness, it moves. And when the mind meets the three poisons, greed, hatred and delusion, suffering becomes deeply rooted. Let's begin with greed in the mind. This appears as endless wanting. I'll be happy when the mind projects happiness into the future, and as long as happiness is always later, peace is never now. You may notice how rarely the mind rests in simple presence. Even in moments of comfort, it plans, worries, remembers, compares. Then comes hatred in the mind. This appears as judgment, blame, resentment, self-criticism. You replay conversations. You relive mistakes. You speak harshly to yourself in ways you would never speak to others. And slowly, the mind becomes a battlefield rather than a home. And then there is delusion in the mind, the most subtle poison. This is believing that your thoughts are who you are, that every story your mind tells must be true, that every emotion defines you. But Buddhism teaches something radical and freeing. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that sees them. So how do we work with the mind? Through mindfulness. Mindfulness does not mean controlling the mind. It means observing it without being ruled by it. When a thought arises, instead of following it blindly, try noticing a thought has arisen. Not, this is me. Not, this is true. Just, this is a thought. This small distance breaks the spell. Another powerful antidote is letting go, not suppressing thoughts, but not feeding them. If you don't give a thought your attention, emotion, and belief, it naturally dissolves, just like a fire dies when it has no fuel. Another powerful antidote is letting go, not suppressing thoughts, but not feeding them. If you don't give a thought your attention, emotion, and belief, it naturally dissolves, just like a fire dies when it has no fuel. The six senses are not your enemies. They are simply doors. When you walk through them unconsciously, suffering follows. But when you walk through them with awareness, peace becomes possible right here in daily life. You don't need to escape the world. You only need to meet it wisely. If this video helped you see your life more clearly, please like, share, and subscribe to Mindfulness, a space for calm and inner freedom. Let me know in the comments which sense challenges you the most. Until next time, be gentle with yourself and aware of this moment.